What makes a man never forget you? Not the way you smile, not the perfume you wore, not the clever things you said, and certainly not how beautiful you looked in that dress. Those things fade, he's seen them before, maybe even with someone else. But what he can't forget is how he felt when he was with you. Not when everything was perfect, not when you were giving him your best, but in the quiet moments when you let your walls down, when you looked away because your heart got a little too honest, when you said something that revealed you weren't trying to impress him, but trying to be seen. Something about those moments, they stay. There's a part of every man that wants to forget, to move on, to compartmentalize. But when he's faced with a woman who reaches into the part of him he's spent his whole life trying to guard, not seduce, but see, that's where something shifts. Not just attraction, not just longing, but memory. A mark on the soul. He may walk away. He may even try to forget, but he won't, because you mirrored something buried in him, the part that rarely meets gentleness. Carl Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine energy that lives in a man's psyche. But forget the theories for a moment. You felt it. The magnetism, the connection, the sense that something about you cracked him open and maybe terrified him too. This video will take you there. Deeper than tips and tricks. We're going to explore the kind of presence, the kind of emotional truth that lives in the woman a man never forgets. Not the loudest one in the room, not the most giving, not the most perfect, but the one who made him feel something he didn't know how to name. So take a breath. Let everything else fall away for a while. This isn't just about him. This is about the part of you that longs to be remembered, because for too long, you've been the one who remembers everyone else. If that hits something in you, you're exactly where you need to be. And if you find something in this that mirrors your journey, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, or just leave a few words in the comments. You never know who's listening. Let's begin. He first notices your energy before he understands your story. It's subtle, not the kind of thing he could ever put into words. You're not trying to pull him in. You're not trying to stand out. You're just there, fully. There's a softness to your presence, but it's not weak. It's not the softness of someone desperate to be loved. It's the softness of someone who has been broken before and built herself back without bitterness. That kind of woman walks differently. She listens without rushing to respond. She looks at you not to flatter but to see. And when she speaks, it's not to impress, it's to tell the truth, even if her voice trembles. Especially then, it's in that trembling where he starts to remember. You remind him of something before the world taught him to forget, before he had to be tough, before he learned to hide. He doesn't realize it at first. It might even scare him, because most of the world rewards the performance, the charm, the confidence, the distraction. But here you are, not asking for anything, and somehow giving him everything. This is the first sign a man will never forget you. You make him feel seen in places he's never allowed himself to be witnessed. You're not analyzing him. You're not fixing him. You're just with him. And the power of that presence, that non-judging gaze, disarms something ancient in him. A boy who once just wanted someone to say, "You don't have to be strong all the time." Maybe you didn't say those words. Maybe you didn't need to, because your silence speaks the loudest. The kind of silence that says, "I'm not here to take from you. I'm not here to be everything. I'm just here to be with you." And do you know what that does to a man who's always had to earn love? It haunts him in the most beautiful way, because he can't categorize you. You weren't trying to prove you were different. You weren't playing hard to get. You were just honest in your laughter, in your uncertainty, in the way you didn't need to fill the quiet. You gave him a feeling he didn't know he was starving for. And it's not just that he won't forget you, it's that he can't. Because the second sign a man never forgets a woman is this. She saw the real him, and she let him see her. Not the curated, filtered version. Not the performance of confidence, but the humanness underneath it all. The fear, the ache, the vulnerability that he recognized because it looked like his own. There was a moment, and maybe it was fleeting, when you said something you didn't mean to share. A small confession, a quiet crack in your voice. And he felt it in his bones, not because you were trying to impress, but because you weren't. That kind of truth, it lingers, not just in his mind, but in his nervous system. It becomes memory. Not the kind of memory that fades with time, but the kind that rises up when he least expects it. The smell of rain, a song he hasn't heard in years. The way the sky looked right before the sun went down the last time he saw you. He might not say it. He might pretend it never touched him. But you were there not just in his life, but in his emotional imprint. You see, people remember what made them feel alive, what made them feel safe, what made them feel like they didn't have to be more than they already were. That's you. And maybe you've wondered why it didn't last. Why men like that leave, even when you gave something so real. But the truth is, what makes a man never forget you isn't always what makes him stay. And we'll get to that. But for now, just breathe into this. You didn't do it wrong. You didn't love too deeply. You didn't scare him off. You just held up a mirror too clear for a man still running from his reflection. And one day, whether it's months or years from now, he'll sit quietly in a room that no longer echoes with your presence. And it will hit him, the way you stayed soft, the way you didn't try to be anything but real, the way you reminded him of who he was before he buried it. And that's the kind of woman a man never forgets. There's a moment he replays not because it was dramatic, but because it was undeniably human. You were sitting across from him, eyes slightly tired from the day, voice lower than usual. And you said something like, "I don't always know how to hold everything I feel." You laughed a little, like you were trying to make it light, but you didn't take it back. And something shifted in him, because in that instant, you weren't the woman he had to chase. You weren't the one he had to impress. You weren't demanding or dazzling. You were real. And for a man who's been trained to armor up, to fix instead of feel, that kind of truth isn't small. It's not ordinary. It's intimate in a way he didn't know how to prepare for. That moment, your honesty lives in him like a quiet ember. He may go through seasons where he forgets, where he tells himself he needs something easier, lighter, safer. But then, something happens. A long drive, an empty room, a day where everything feels too loud, and your name rises up in his mind, not because he wants to, but because something involuntary pulls you forward. You became the voice that asked him to feel, and that's the third sign he will never forget you. You stirred something in him that couldn't be undone. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, what city he moved to, who he's dating now, what distractions he's thrown himself into. You reached a place inside him that most never touch. But here's the hard truth. That kind of depth doesn't guarantee you a place in his life. Because for a man to choose the woman who made him feel, he must be willing to feel everything, not just the desire, not just the comfort, but the grief, the shame, the places inside him still tender from long ago. You reminded him of what he buried. And that's beautiful, but terrifying too. It's easier to love someone who only wants the polished version of him, the one who doesn't ask him to slow down, to listen, to go inward, the one who takes his surface and doesn't question the silence underneath. But you didn't want the surface. You didn't flinch when he got quiet. You didn't punish his stillness or force words from his lips. You waited, not with desperation, but with presence. That kind of woman is rare. He knows it, even if he didn't have the words for it back then. And now, maybe he tries to forget, not because you didn't matter, but because you mattered too much. And the version of himself he was with you, vulnerable, uncertain, soft, didn't match the man he thought he had to be. He might say it wasn't the right time. He might say you were too emotional. But what he really means is, you made me feel too much, and I didn't know what to do with it. That's not your fault. That's not a flaw in your love. It's a mirror to his unhealed places. You gave him a glimpse of home, not the place he grew up, but the place within himself he's never dared to return to. And that's unforgettable. There are women who leave a mark through chaos, through games, through stormy highs and lows. And maybe they're remembered for a while. But you are remembered differently. He doesn't replay arguments. He replays your presence, the stillness in your eyes when you didn't try to be anything, the honesty in your voice when you admitted you didn't have it all together, the way you said goodbye not with bitterness, but with quiet dignity, as if your heart was breaking, but you still chose not to close it. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength men carry with them, quietly, even when they pretend they don't feel it. You were never too much. You were just enough to wake up a part of him he forgot existed. And maybe, in some distant future, he'll finally become the man who can hold that version of himself, the one you met first. But even if he doesn't, even if his name never appears on your phone again, know this: you were unforgettable because you weren't a performance. You were the truth. There's something sacred about the woman who doesn't chase closure, who doesn't force the ending to make sense, who just lets it hurt and lets it pass. That was you, not because you didn't care, but because you cared deeply and you knew clinging wouldn't change what he couldn't give. You didn't beg. You didn't explain your worth like a resume. You didn't try to be more lovable, more easy, more digestible. You let it go, even when it felt like tearing your own skin. And that's the fourth reason he'll never forget you. You left with your soul intact. He might have expected you to fall apart, to come back, to wait in the background, but you didn't. You allowed yourself to grieve privately and carry your silence like a prayer, not because you didn't have words, but because you knew they wouldn't reach the part of him that was closed off. He won't forget that, because most people leave with noise accusations, dramatics, ultimatums. But not you. You left like a woman who knew her value wasn't up for negotiation. And he may not have known it then, but one day he will realize the silence you left behind was not empty. It was full of everything he wasn't ready to receive. And in that stillness, your memory lingers the loudest. It won't be in the big moments that he misses you. It'll be in the pauses, in the soft morning light, in the way another woman laughs but never quite reaches the ache the way you did, in the way someone touches his shoulder warm, but he doesn't feel safe the way he felt with you. He'll try to explain it to himself. We were just different. She was sensitive. We weren't compatible. But there will be nights when he'll lay in bed with the lights off and admit, if only to himself, that he lost something real. Because what makes a man never forget you is not your perfection. It's your presence in the most imperfect moments. It's how you made him feel when everything was raw, and how you didn't close your heart even when his did. There's a kind of grief men carry when they let go of a woman who met them at the level of their soul. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It just stays. It weaves into the background of every connection after. It whispers in the places no one else can reach. And no matter how much he moves on in titles, in relationships, in smiles for the camera, there's always a part of him that remembers you. Because you weren't trying to be remembered, you were trying to be real. And now, maybe you're the one who sits in the quiet. Maybe you wonder if he thinks of you, if it ever meant anything. If the connection you felt was one-sided, it wasn't. He felt it. Even if he never said it. Even if he pushed it away. And he will remember, because there's a fifth truth about unforgettable women. She didn't need to be unforgettable. She just chose not to abandon herself. You didn't twist yourself into something more palatable. You didn't try to be the cool girl. You didn't water yourself down to avoid rejection. You stood flawed, trembling, radiant, and let yourself be known. That kind of courage etches itself into a man's memory, even when he doesn't understand it, especially then. So if you're listening now, wondering if it mattered, if you mattered, let me tell you what no one told you back then. You are not forgettable. You are the ache in his chest he doesn't know how to name. You are the tenderness he won't find in noise. You are the memory that doesn't fade, not because you stayed, but because you saw him. And whether he ever tells you or not, you changed him. He just hasn't slowed down long enough to feel it yet. But one day he will. And by then you won't need the apology, or the closure, or the explanation. Because you'll already know. The kind of love you gave is not something the world forgets. Not now. Not ever. There's a strange kind of power in walking away with love still in your chest. The world tells you to harden, to numb, to delete every trace, and never look back. But you didn't. You carried him gently, even in absence. You let yourself miss him without making it mean you were weak. You let the tears fall without needing them to fix anything. And that is rare. That is divine. Because the woman a man never forgets is not the one who held on the longest. She's the one who loved the clearest and had the courage to let go when her spirit whispered, "This is no longer yours to hold." He will remember that. He will remember that you didn't try to compete. You didn't try to convince. You didn't try to become what he needed in order to feel whole. Instead, you let him go with grace. And that grace, it lingers, not because it was loud, but because it came from a place so pure, so honest, so untouched by games, that it doesn't need to shout to be remembered. He'll sit with someone else one day. Maybe she'll be wonderful. Maybe she'll give him stability, softness, support. And yet, there will be something in him that flickers, a moment where he wonders, why does it still feel like a piece of me is somewhere else? And it's not because you were perfect. It's because you showed him something real in a world addicted to pretending. You loved without conditions. You didn't ask him to be anything other than who he was, even when who he was couldn't stay. You didn't worship his potential. You loved his presence. You weren't waiting for him to become someone better. You met him exactly where he was, and you brought all of you to the table. That level of emotional intimacy, it's rare. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires a kind of inner safety most people never touch. But you had it. Not because you never doubted, but because you kept choosing your heart even after it had been broken before. And that is unforgettable. He may not remember the last words you spoke, but he'll remember how they felt. He'll remember the way you looked at him when you were still open, even in the goodbye. That's the sixth mark of a woman a man never forgets. She doesn't close herself to protect her pride. She closes the door only when her peace asks her to, and he will revisit that door in his mind, in his heart, in the silence of nights he can't explain. He may not knock, he may never try to open it again, but it will haunt him. Not because you made it a prison, but because he knows, if he had been ready, if he had just held on a little longer, there was something holy on the other side. But your love was never meant to be earned through struggle. It was meant to be met, and if he couldn't, not because he's cruel, but because he's unready, then the story had to end there. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you started remembering who you were before you were trying to be enough for someone else. That kind of remembering, it's the most magnetic thing in the world. A woman who comes home to herself after loving deeply, she glows in a way no man forgets. Because he didn't just lose you, he lost the version of himself that only existed in your presence. He lost the mirror that reflected his soul without judgment. He lost the softness he didn't know how to hold. And when he finally meets someone who only knows how to love the man he presents to the world, not the one underneath, he'll feel it. The absence of you, not in grand ways, but in the quiet. The quiet is where you live now, not as a ghost, but as truth. Not as regret, but as a reminder of what's possible when two people dare to be fully seen. And maybe, just maybe one day, when the noise has settled and the world no longer distracts him from himself, he'll remember everything you were, and he'll ache, not just for you, but for the part of himself he could only ever access when he was with you. There's a kind of woman who doesn't just pass through a man's life, she reshapes it. Not by force, not by trying to change him, but by existing so truthfully in her own heart, it dares him to face his own. You were that kind of woman, and the final sign, he will never forget you. You awakened something in him that he may never find again, not because it doesn't exist in others, but because it was called forth by the unique alchemy between your soul and his. You see, when you love someone from your wholeness, not your need, you become a mirror. And most people don't know what to do with that. A mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter, it just reflects. And when he looked at you, he saw the man he could be. He saw his tenderness, his emotional courage, his quiet longing to be more than what the world told him he had to be. But here's the thing, when someone isn't ready to become that version of themselves, the one that can meet your depth, match your softness, sit beside your fire, they pull away, not because they don't care, but because becoming that man takes more than desire. It takes work, it takes accountability. It takes the death of ego, and most of all, it takes time. But time doesn't always give us second chances. Sometimes it gives us clarity. Too late. He'll scroll past your name. He'll see a photo, hear a song, catch a memory in the way a stranger says your name. And something will ache inside him. He won't tell anyone. Maybe not even himself, but he'll feel it because you were never background noise. You were a chapter he couldn't skim. You were a presence that demanded nothing but gave everything truth, depth, safety. And when he lies awake one night wondering why nothing feels quite like it did when he was with you, he'll realize he didn't lose someone easy to love. He lost someone who loved him without conditions, who met him before he fully met himself. And that kind of loss doesn't heal with distraction. It lives in the spaces between what he pretends to want and what his soul actually craves. You were never too intense. You were never too emotional. You were just enough to call forward his realness, and too rare to replace. And even if he builds a whole life without you, there will always be a door somewhere deep in his subconscious with your name on it. He may never open it again. He may never walk through, but he'll know it's there because he remembers. He remembers the way your silence felt like sanctuary. He remembers the way you didn't flinch when he shared something broken. He remembers how you held space, not to fix him, but to see him. And most of all, he remembers how he felt when he was with you. That's the thing. Men forget faces. They forget conversations. They forget the nights out, the gifts, the the routines, but they never forget how they felt when they were allowed even for a moment to be fully human. You gave him that, not because he earned it, but because that's who you are. You love with your hands open. You love without keeping score. You love with the knowing that true connection isn't about control, it's about recognition. And one day, when someone asks him about the woman who changed everything, he won't mention the one who stayed the longest. He'll mention you. He'll say, "There was this woman once, and she saw right through me." And maybe he'll stop there. Maybe he won't find the words for the rest, because some love isn't meant to be explained, only remembered. You were not a lesson. You were a moment of truth. And that moment never fathers. Maybe you've doubted yourself. Maybe you've stared at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, wondering if he ever thinks of you, if he ever misses you, if you ever mattered as much to him as he still matters to you. And maybe no one gave you the answer. So let me give it to you now. He remembers, not because he should, not because he owes you, but because some energy leaves fingerprints not on the body, but on the soul. You touch something in him that doesn't forget, and maybe you never get the text. Maybe the apology never comes. Maybe there's no grand reunion, but you don't need it, because the love you gave was never wasted. It wasn't small, it wasn't invisible, and it didn't disappear just because he couldn't hold it. It remains in him, in you, in the quiet spaces where real things live. And now, you get to carry that same love forward, not in bitterness, not in regret, but in knowing that the version of you who showed up with an open heart, she is not foolish, she is rare. She is the kind of woman a man never forgets. And if this voice, if this moment felt like a reflection of your own heart, don't let it be the last. Stay with us. Subscribe to the channel if it moved you. Share it with someone who still carries silent pain. Or just leave a quiet word below sometimes. A whisper is all someone else needs to keep breathing. You're not alone in this. You never were. You are seen. You are loved. And no, he will never forget you.